So, hello, ni hao, everyone. Welcome to this special edition of Automotive Logistics, and I'm very pleased to be able today to travel to a place I haven't been able to travel to now for quite some time, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, to Shanghai, where we're going to be joined in conversation by Dr. Susanne Lehmann, Executive Director of Logistics for Shanghai Volkswagen, SAIC Volkswagen, an important joint venture, of course, for the group in China, where we have an opportunity to talk about her role there and of course, some of the current issues that we're facing in China. For those of you who haven't known her before, Susanna has had a great long career in logistics. In fact, this is her second tour in China, has also worked across Mexico, Europe, and various functions, and most recently, I'm Director of Production for North American region. So it's my great pleasure to welcome Susanna. Susanna, it's great to see you, and great to see Shanghai in the background there, alluding to, so as I said, some of the things that I've certainly missed over the last few years.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chris. I'm very happy to be with you to discuss some of our strategies and situation actually here. And I'm happy to show you a little bit of my wonderful view. We are here since some time now. Nevertheless, it stays wonderful to be here and see this wonderful city from up above. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, it's our pleasure. Thanks again for joining us. So let's just kick off with a quick overview of your main responsibilities at SAIC Volkswagen, and talk a little bit about, clearly what's different about this. I mean, you've just come out of North America, where you're based in Mexico, as I mentioned. So tell us a little bit about this current opportunity that you're working in.
And it's everything about logistics, from very operative issues actually here in Shanghai, in the inbound logistics, with all the port being stuffed with containers, the airports being partially closed, issues in our 10 car plants that we try to keep up and running, to all the planning of production and distribution for, in normal good times, nearly 2 million cars. Mainly for the Chinese market is a difference for me, but also, of course, including all the strategic outlining of our future here, future projects in the factories, innovation, digitalization in production and logistics, which I have also done in the North American region. There I was merely responsible for production control and strategy of production, which was also something, but for only more or less 500,000 cars being produced there for the markets in US, Canada, and Mexico.
Can you talk a little bit about how it's different managing logistics supply chain for a Volkswagen joint venture, and specifically there in China, of course?
Yeah, of course. It's not only Volkswagen. We have two stakeholders. We have two joint venture partners. We have the huge network of SAIC Motor Company, a lot of supplier companies, other companies, which also may something like competition, speaking about scarce parts, allocation of parts, but also giving us a huge possibility to raise synergies, to also breathe with our production demands between each other. So it's really huge.
And of course, as I mentioned up front, this is actually not the first time you've worked in China. I think not also the first time you've worked at the SAIC Volkswagen joint venture back in 2004 to 7, I believe. A lot has changed since then. I think even the view behind you probably has changed and grown in leaps and bounds, as is often the case in China. You talk a little bit about when we look at logistics, I mean, clearly there's a huge volume difference now, but what are some of the big differences working in logistics now compared to your first tour, so to speak?
Yeah, in those times, I remember we didn't have, for example, navigation was still blocked. So driving with other orientation methods, but this was for my personal logistics. Of course, we have now in total 10 factories. We only had those in Anting in those days. We have a huge network of suppliers of 3PLs. We have all the digitalization, which is happening here very much faster than in Europe usually. So the pace that we are doing here in innovation, in volume, in production, in expanding our network is really huge and has been huge over the last years. We hope, of course, we can keep that up now with the actual situation, with the trends that we see in the Chinese market.
Can you talk a little bit about how these regulations currently and restrictions are affecting supply and production at the company and those of your suppliers as well?
Yeah, of course, we are trying to cooperate as much as possible, as best we can, to support the governments. Really, yeah, they say it's a fight. It's really a fight against the virus to support with all the hygiene measures within our own factories, if we can produce, of course, doing all the necessary tests, protection measures, etc. And also taking very, very close contacts with our suppliers, keeping them in the loop very closely about real production plans, not only some EDI, which we send out just like that, but really informing them, keeping us informed about their situation. Can they work? Do they have enough parts? What is the transit also of our tier 1 and 2 suppliers? It's really communication, as always.
Can you talk a little bit about the context in which the semiconductor shortage has and currently is affecting production in China?
A lot of production sites are in Asia, Japan, Malaysia, etc. So we are depending on the region as a source of our semiconductors, but we know also that usually the supply chains or production chains are really worldwide. So the first thing is here to keep production running also in times of crisis as much as possible. And finding also technical alternatives. Some things I'm really proud of, we were able to install here already, which the European colleagues are still struggling with. Really being flexible enough, find additional or alternative resources, using other chips, using also, and sometimes even changing functionalities for our clients, sometimes even increasing and finding better, sometimes even cheaper solutions on the technical side. This is really something which is super here, which is functioning very well. Also because we can count on the huge experience and network of both our joint venture partners, Volkswagen and SAIC.
One of the things that we've certainly seen globally with all this supply chain crises is, the importance of, where you said, communication with logistics providers, and clearly also the visibility across the supply chain, sub-suppliers. When we think about semiconductors, I'm sure it's been an education for many to learn even more about where things really are located and impacted. In terms of getting to better grips with that visibility, have you seen changes, improvements in the systems that you're using to kind of help improve this?
Yeah, I would need that already right now, here and today. We don't have that on really 100% coverage, but we need, and we are trying to get hold of our supplier data, of the transit data. You know that a lot of airports are being or are rejecting actually dangerous goods, for example, because of the long disinfection times. Material is staying much longer at the airports, and we really have to have that visibility. We have a huge network of contacts, of 3PLs, of transportation providers, of custom providers, etc., custom agents, which we are using also now to get this visibility. But sometimes we really still have to use the phone or WeChat, which is here a really good method to get data very, very fast. But of course, this is not secure. This is not the 100% coverage that we need in a secure and safe way to interchange data with our suppliers. So we have now the great awareness in the crisis that we need something like that, and we need heavily to work on that, because this will not be the last crisis, I suppose. WeChat is a public, official, non-official medium, which we, of course, never use for any kind of confidential data. But if you need really some very fast information exchange, we use that, of course. And we try also to bring it to a more secure, certified level now.
how the Volkswagen Group's logistics planning execution in China works together with the concern logistic, with group logistics, and sort of, again, this kind of global coordination, synergies, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm having talks, of course, very often with my colleagues daily. We just had a talk this Monday on how we will arrange our ramp-up scenario recovery programs. What can we do without harming the balance that we have created now, considering the allocation between European, North American, South American, and Asian factories, especially if we talk about semiconductors. So there is clear alignment, clear rules that we are all following. And of course, even our recovery programs are acting within those rules and guidelines of the Volkswagen AG. But we also have the SAIC network where we can say we have to stay in this framework that is being given to us. We have the big pressure to ramp up again, to recover the volume lost now in the lockdown.
I know there's a big electrification push. Perhaps it would be good for our audience just to get a kind of grounding and sense of how the production is shaping up and what are the new things which are coming.
Yeah, of course, the electro vehicle, or NEV, new electric vehicle as it's called here, has a huge increment planned also for the coming years. We are planning our product initiative. I have myself, of course, an ID.6, which I love. It's fantastic. I'm longing to drive it again. But I'm also very proud we have started to produce Audi and also are increasing now our electric product portfolio by the Q5 e-tron, which is coming into the market in the second half of this year. So I'm very proud of the electrification initiative that we are running here. It's very much forward than in Europe or even in North America, what I have lived personally in the last years. Of course, also, I don't want to forget the ICE vehicles. Sorry, Chris. We are producing, as I said, also Audi A7Ls as a relatively new model on the market. We also will go on with all our product initiatives, for example, talking about Tiguan, La Vida, etc., with a lot of product improvements that we are bringing into the market in the next years.
And of course, I mean, with that variety of powertrain, a variety of models, and now, as you mentioned, also brands, including Audi. I'm sure that brings some new dimensions, complexities, requirements for flexibility, resilience, etc., across the supply chain. Can you talk a little bit about the inbound network that supports this production, in terms of perhaps the logistics, the supplier base?
So talking about percentages, how much do we still get from out of China? Speaking about the more established models, it's really going down to 5% perhaps, if much. But for Audi, for the new cars, we're still getting a higher percentage from Europe mainly, but also other countries like Korea, other Asian countries, USA, Mexico, within the Volkswagen network, of course.
So would it be fair to say that the networks in China, around the plants, are they fairly concentrated in close proximity, or is it quite a complex spread mix and stuff?
Of course, we have a big conglomeration here in Anting, where also a main part of our factories is, and a lot of outside of Anting factories receive parts from this area, from the Jiangsu area, Kunshan area around here, the Anting factories. Of course, we try also to localize strategic parts, talking about the new models that are going to be produced far away. For example, in our Changsha factory, which is more or less 965 kilometers away from Anting, we use river transportation across the Yangtze River. Also, of course, land and train transportation to go there. But you can imagine nearly 1,000 kilometers, it's quite a bit. And We have also weather conditions that don't allow always very stable supply. So it's huge. Even if you talk about Urumqi, this is 4,000 kilometers away northwest. It's really some other dimensions, other kilometers than we are used to in Europe. Nevertheless, it's functioning quite well. We have a super established network, even also for our car distribution, the same as for the materials and the SKD sets that we are sending to Urumqi.
We look at the in-house internal logistics. I mean, a trend that we see in Europe and around the world, of course, is sort of more automation, use of AMRs, AGVs to move parts around and build some more flexibility. Is that a strong trend in China and Europe, the plants as well?
Yes, of course, although we have to say we still have a slightly different salary structure here in China, so the pressure to automize is there, especially, of course, in the higher salary regions like Anting. So this has led historically to a different level of automation between our factories, which we are trying to check, to evaluate, is that still valid? Is it still a good way to go? In general, of course, we are trying, and we are actually, for example, developing our own control system to include all the logistics equipment, just like AGVs, but including also forklifts or whatever is moving logistically around to get it controlled, to get it into our predictive maintenance program in order to really reduce the downtimes to zero or near zero because of our logistics operation has to run. If we can produce, we want to produce full speed, of course, and cannot afford any logistics error to hinder production in this situation. So we do that, we do our own system. Of course, also very much looking to Europe, what are they doing? What is the tendency there, the development status there, and I'm really proud to say that our solution will be really state of the art.
Will that system, you mentioned predictive maintenance, there is it capturing data to build analytics and more predictive flows as well for the material flow?
Yes, of course. It's not only about the hardware. It's also routing, optimize our production line feeding, optimize the way and the cycle times that we are having there. This is included, but we included mainly also this hardware focus as a really new thing, which I think is not so much done until now. So we want really to check our equipment. How is it how is it doing? How are the batteries? How fast should we charge? How often should we charge to avoid maintenance, for example, and do the maintenance in time to avoid downtimes?
Volkswagen has a global industrial cloud initiative, which is pulling lots of data together. Clearly, China always has different dimensions because of different internet regulations and things. But I was just curious whether this system that you're building there connects as well into the industrial cloud, or does it have a similar kind of function like that?
Generally, we are going also the way of industrial clouds. We're just working with other partners here than in Europe. I think this is known and no secret. But the technology and the way how we are doing things is quite similar. So we really try to integrate this system in our general production control system. If we do that via the cloud, is not yet out. I think not in the first step.
You referenced earlier still using EDI in some places, and I was just curious, is EDI still playing a critical role, or is this part of the evolution, or is it evolving into, say, more of like a software as a service model? Or are you still kind of using EDI and supplementing it with, let's say, additional information and data reads?
And EDI is the official source. This is clear. This is and has been and will be for some time. The EDI has its limitations, so it's just one big number that we are issuing out without any clear forecast, without any explanation, detail, shift pattern, or production plan that our suppliers really can see. And to be honest, it has also a political dimension. So if you're showing a number, we know that it is going to be seen. And sorry to say, but we have seen some of our fellow OEMs really publishing very, very high numbers, which are so incredibly high that nobody is believing them anymore, nearly. So how can we really work beyond EDI, go to real-time forecasts, go to real also parts demands and simulations that we can do perhaps together in cooperative mode with our suppliers and give them on a short-term basis much more flexible production scenarios, but also more quantifiable numbers. I think this is what we are actually trying to do and quite successfully.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the, let's say, the scale of working in partnerships, for example. Do you, as a well-established joint venture, but also working with what is the largest car maker in China, in SAIC, does this bring other benefits in terms of purchasing, in terms of supply, and logistics opportunities?
Yeah, thanks. I think I've mentioned before, we have such a huge network. We have direct SAIC companies in our supplier force. So we can really also use the direct connections, the market power that SAIC has, also giving us big advantages in parts allocations in case of scarce resources. That is true. We are using that, but always in a balanced way. So we are getting help from Volkswagen, getting help from SAIC, and trying to level the benefits for both of them as much as possible. I think every big OEM has the special trustful cooperation with a special logistics company. Same do we. We have Angie since years as a trustful, very cooperative partner that is helping us out a lot in this crisis. Actually, and I think it's normal that we also nevertheless work together on innovation, but also try from time to time to bring some fresh input in, especially talk about innovation, talk about processes, optimizations, but really also always pushing and trusting in our cooperation mode that has been successful for many, many years now with, in the SAIC case, Angie.
Are there kind of specific areas that you have in focus to work on improving?
I think it has already been mentioned. We are working so much with suppliers, talking about capacities, talking about simulations, program ideas, production plans that we have both in common, and the input that we need from our suppliers. So this is mainly my topic, which I have taken up and will tackle together with my colleagues in purchasing and IT to really get that trustful supplier cooperation, but also the technological basis to work with them, do simulations together online, working with AI to get all the restrictions and optimization targets for a production program. I can, for example, try to optimize it CO2 wise. I can optimize it financial wise. I can try to optimize it on the usage of my capacity in production, etc., and work with all these conditions together with our supplier base. This is my dream and what we are really working on together, actually.
Growing mix of models, brands, and of course of NEV, of new energy vehicle production, which is and will continue to rise dramatically in China. When you look at that from a supply chain and logistics point of view, what are some of the really key considerations that you're working on with your suppliers and partners? We know the battery, of course, is a big topic, but how would you categorize that?
Yeah, for me, it's still very, very much a topic that we need specialized functionalities for our clients here in the Chinese market. Somebody has recently mentioned karaoke functions. We don't have it yet. We will have it perhaps, but you know that Volkswagen is really a global acting OEM with global R&D resources. But of course, focusing more and more on these regional needs and demands of our customers. And this is very important for me to see how regionalization, localization is going forward, not only in part sourcing, but also in R&D resources that are being placed here in the region that are really developing the functions exactly for our market here. This is really still a topic which we are pushing very much forward. Yeah, logistics is more and more this coordination function that we really need in order to bring, especially the very, very fast software development, combined with the still very long timelines that we have if we talk about supply from Europe, from other Asian countries, from Americas. So what can we do in logistics to really coordinate and help bring the functions as fast as possible, but also as secure as possible into the market, into production and into the market. We are generating hardware and software combination warning functions, really telling us, hey, careful with the long lead time, you cannot reach this production date, and are generating together with our production and development guys possibilities to have something like a software flashing as a standard process, which is still pretty new for us, but we have to develop it and stabilize it. It will be, I think, a normal function also in the upcoming years until we reach really on a broad range this OTU over-the-air function that we all are longing for. So logistics more and more as not only the muscles, but the brains that is coordinating all these new, especially software indicated functions.
Absolutely. I mean, we talk about the software-defined car. I suppose we can increasingly talk about the software-defined supply chain, and it sounds indeed like that's some of the directions that the group is going. Great to see China out in front there. Sustainability is clearly a core objective of the group, and also in relation to new energy vehicles. I mean, often Volkswagen has made it pretty clear that it makes little sense to have a zero-emission vehicle if it's not also carbon neutral in its production and supply chain, or at least eventually. Can you talk a little bit about targets and goals or steps that you're taking in China to create more sustainable logistics, and perhaps especially as may relate to the battery chain as well?
Of course, I have mentioned the dimensions, the huge amount of kilometers that we have to overcome in our production network. Of course, we are, although it's not yet an obligation, we are preparing and working on alternative transportation methods, green trucks. This is what we are actually also working with our 3PLs upon, doing some very successful pilots at this moment in time. But one step ahead, also in the planning process, of course, we are trying to influence as much as possible, bringing the logistics and ecological factor into considerations about sourcing. For example, do we really have to bring aluminium from Europe to Anting to Changsha? Can we not help and really push localization initiatives for those, especially big and heavy parts? And of course, we're trying to avoid to transport batteries for longer times on a normal diesel truck. This is a no-go, of course, in the planning as well as in operations.
Is it a challenge already to get battery supply in some of the early NEV production, like for example in Anting?
Of course, this is what we try in the planning phases for a new factory, including battery shops, including electric vehicles. Try to push it as close as possible towards the factory. Try to have the transportation of the big, huge battery in an automated way without using trucks. avoiding everything manual, avoiding everything traditional, counting already in the planning phase on the future orientation also towards ecological measures that we have to fulfill. You have a huge argument convincing your controllers usually to use a slightly still more expensive transportation technology, but I think it's worth it. We have to work on that now. We cannot wait until it's an obligation when everybody is trying to start with it. Of course, we have legislation mainly in Europe, like the Lieferketten-Sorgfaltspflichtgesetz, sorry for the long German word. But of course, we are, as a Volkswagen Group, also doing that in China, also checking our suppliers. Are they fulfilling all the criteria? Are we compliant? Are we fulfilling the Volkswagen internal standards? And if not, what can we do really to openly improve the situation, and in the worst case, not work with those suppliers that don't fulfill these criteria? Same for our 3PLs, for our transportation and logistic partners. And of course, we are trying to, as I said, diversify a little bit to really generate resilience, not only parts-wise, capacity-wise, but also that we have more than one partner with which we can improve our processes, work on innovations, and motivate each other to go forward more towards a really modern, efficient logistic network. Really take it as a challenge, not wait for legislation to come up. We're trying to check and do what we can already right now to be prepared and have a good network.
But looking at your wider, let's say, vision over the next 5 years for what you'd like to see achieved inside Volkswagen's logistics and supply chain, what are the key goals and objectives that you're working towards?
Working towards digitalization, work really towards this balanced production program planning, so that I don't have to every time go back to Excel, but really can work on simulations, improving our situation, because I think it's clear. Actually, we have a quite difficult situation on the market. We don't know how the market will develop after the COVID closures. But if it goes up again, and also in the next years will go up, especially for the electric vehicles, we cannot afford to be late with our products, to be late with some new functions, and to have whatever disruption in the production and logistics process. So this is what we have to generate: a stable, forward-looking, simulative, cooperative network. And this is my goal.
It's a great goal, and one that I think I do believe is achievable, but will come with a lot of collaboration work across the organization with your partners, and I'm sure building the sort of digital systems that you talked about earlier will play key roles in this as well. Susanna, thank you so much for taking the time and for visiting with us and with our audience. And we couldn't have timed it better, because we did give the audience the opportunity, and just to remind again, to see the beautiful lights starting to come out in Shanghai. Yeah, indeed. Nightfall coming, and those who know, of course, Shanghai, know that it's a very special place at night. The lights certainly dance across the city. So thanks for sharing that with us too. This has been a great opportunity to get some insight of what's happening there at SAIC Volkswagen, and we're really looking forward to keeping up with you as you work towards that vision.
Yeah, thank you very much again for this interesting discussion. It's always great to talk to you, get your input, and discuss some things about the future especially. I wish you good luck for the next Automotive Logistics Conference, and always happy to be in contact. Thank you.
Absolutely, and we will. Thanks again.